It's Sunday. It's November 27th, 2022. I am in this. I went to Zion today. I received the message of the local freemen, I suppose, or they don't call themselves as such, but under the gathering of that flag, they have some independence, is what the conscious humans, again, I'm not getting or trying to pick a fight between private equity and public utility. That is something that is a frightening group of whatever. So I stay in the simplex, complex, multiplex of there's a nanophyte, a microphyte, and a macrophyte. There's phage everywhere. And at the moment in macrophage and the ingestion of other whatevers. I started before I went to church. They had on this morning, someone put it in the programming. I don't know who. Again, I've just recently found out that there's multiple schedules for some of the guardianship, I suppose. So there was this movie, Transcendence, came out in 2014. Again, I did not have access to the script, to the funding. I didn't know it existed. I've watched it once before. I thought it was very well written. It was a deep movie. I felt divinakt. It speaks on consciousness. It touches on, or so I believe, it touches on climate change issues, some of the devastating effects of some of the progression. Same time, interestingly enough, a different whatever. One is Johnny Depp. The other is Kevin Costner in this Yellowstone. I caught wind of season 4, episode 7. Kevin Costner has a speech in there that he is the anti-progression. I tend to believe that that is somebody admirable, at least in my macro sense. And I know this macro fight has macrophage capabilities, so I have belief in that system for immunity of some sort, or false sense of security, for which I feel very secure when he's in charge of things. So there's this part of the movie that they touch on. I see like real deep symbolism in, there's an elevator, a BDC, 5 stories down, for whatever George does with his intelligence in the field on the side. I'm unclear at the moment. I do see signs, brown and white, or sepia and white color. I've documented them in my travels, along with several others, just to gain my local field back to one level of consciousness for a local sense of security. Just so the macro fight knows that the nano is not fighting. Nano is actually gathering human intelligence and field observational intelligence to protect oneself in self-defense, with the help of the macrophage, who is the one who decides what immunity looks like, and however that works. This has been a very, like they mentioned, this transcendence that at one point They say something along the lines of, we're not going to fight them, we're going to transcend them. In church today, looking for signs of a plethora of different sources of intelligence. So the shepherd and bishop of the sheep, or the whatever they call themselves, in this particular Zion, who is only seen by photograph. And I had to look on the wall. It's not, his name's not plastered on it, but I did check the Mac's iPad internet of whatever they built. And I think they refer to themselves as research. I'm looking for the signs of intelligence that they put up in this public briefing for those of us that know there's private equity somewhere and a public utility. I noticed also in this movie, they happen to hit Johnny Depp with a bullet that has radiological, I can only imagine, that has something to do with, I believe, public utility conversation, at radiological effects that are in a microdosed possibility of health consequences, which are adverse effects or side effects of this more public utility that's going on. But again, there's so many intricacies of what I've witnessed and what I've learned upon my investigation of the local area. And these advanced consequences. My own personal health has been harmed in the process as well. Not because I wanted to, but just it is just how this is evolution of some sort, of a big city. They make mention in here, the Morgan Freeman mentions something about lost decades of research and development, the Defense Department, and is the work on track? Now, what takes precedence in this area, I wonder? If I read this passage, they mention that it's part of the Holy Gospel, Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew, just as a reference for gospel, as a small piece of the integrated human intelligence, I guess, in a PIN category for quantifiable whatever. They informed me through the movie Transcendence that they believe PIN to mean physically independent neural network. So I'm looking, and it says, Jesus said to the disciples, "But about the day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah, where so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together. One will be taken, one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. And then it says, the gospel of the Lord. Praise be to thee, O Christ. Now, in the gilded room, while grinding meal with the other gilded woman in the room, for which the label on the door said the gilded room, the women's gilded room, no less. So we sat together with the children, my son being there, 2012, second millennial, 12, who also has this 15 connection, but whatever on that. So I don't know how they're reading into that. So I'm there with her and we are dressed. I'm dressed as this. And he is dressed in the best Sunday outfit I could. I mean, it's not top deck appropriate. I mean, it's the best of field threads I could find for he and I. So we are in this room with this woman, and we are going through the lesson, she having more experience than I, higher vocabulary. Most certainly, if we sat for an SAT, she would clearly score myself, which, again, it is what it is in the rooms that I've been held within. So I am cognizant of it. And so she spoke. I told her that the window and frame of reference I had as main frame of reference was Transcendent movie this morning, the tail end of it, and then walked into these words of the Gospel of Matthew, for which I then had to ground myself in this particular passage, and try to help my son along, since I have more field experience, more life experience than he at the moment. And sometimes, even though some of the children, well, in this area at the moment, there's not this deep sense of connection like I was born with. It's more like it's just floating words in the air, but it's not really in like a wired in tightly matrix or mainframe at the moment. I mean, I hung on every word and I tried to connect with the words that were spoken to me as a child. Memory recall being a problem from the onset of whatever's going on with the man who holds up the sky and the fight for ground forces, somewhere between the whatever. They also mentioned this rift, RIFT. I've always known rift to be a fight. But going back to this gilded room and this conversation that we had this morning, I said to my son, in French, je suis means I am. So if you take it for a personal perspective of where we are in the world of things, and you take Jesus's perspective of the one who was already hurt, was already on the cross, was already really persecuted and already harmed in the process of the kings getting to their kingdom and running their operations and whatever, and you being one of the people that are under the protection of the good Lord. I was like, Noah, for me, they have shown me just recently, Noah is representative of the world of weather, the world of climate, the world of I am at effect, as je suis, as in the field, if there's a squall that is programmed into our atmospheric climate for the planet, I cannot stop it. I am just a humble piece of a much larger system. However, the GOD did give special paper at some point for special prowess, for special relation in larger metrics, for which I'm incredibly grateful, although at times I feel it has been quite a hindrance as opposed to whatever, but here we are. In case the macrophage wants to know how the piece in the field feels. Should even recognize that we have feelings at this point. There is an FBI case file that they put in this particular private equity piece or public display piece of I'm not quite sure what. It does represent, it looks like there's, if I read the numbers correctly, I'm not going to read them on camera, but in a kind of sort of but not really way, I hear the pattern. And then it says revolutionary independence from technology security briefing. And then it says artificial intelligence is an unnatural abomination and a threat to humanity. Then it says quantum processors for faster computation in more of like a state-of-the-art type way. They do have mention of a will, of a Max, and then of this Morgan. And then they use Freeman. Morgan Freeman as the actor. But Will and Max as the characters. Also, I noticed inside the movie they reference this Y2K. They explain it in the movie Transcendence as one version of Y2K. I've never heard before, not spoken by any human. Then there's the real field Y2K that happened. And then there is a merchandising Y2K that I noticed that was embossed on metal. And then when I looked it up on the Maxi Pad PAD internet, of some, I don't know what the P stands for, if that's Pacific specific, an advanced, whatever. For nobody here really speaks about who built the internet. They say that it's taxpayer dollars. They don't really say much else about it. Then there's also at 1.08.05, again, symbolism in the numbers. There's Evelyn. For me, it's mirror reflection of somebody I have in the field that is now in the movie, that brings a whole nother dimension of realism into the surrealism that others may not connect with. But it sends a message, a really deeply impactful message to my person at reading symbols differently. They also mention, Johnny Depp says something along the lines like, but isn't this your dream? In this very creepy, scary, star-filled way. And I'm thinking to myself, now, are you talking about wakeful consciousness dreams? Or are we talking about the REM dream sequence when I was a child that would happen, and then I'd wake into this field of wakeful consciousness and want to immediately return to wherever I was, because where I was felt like I was getting something done to help this portion of my journey until that was cut off in the REM state of things. I don't know if that has anything to do with the quantum computation at more complex and ergonomically designed things. Not quite sure. But when I look, because there's so many different I mean, between a nanophyte in a local sense, a macrophyte and a microphyte, that I'm somehow a piece of that larger cog and puzzle, but not necessarily able to get to private equity of whomever controls the safety portion of my journey here. There's a conversation between Evelyn and Max where he says it's the end of primitive world and the dawn of a more advanced age, which really frightens me. And he says that it's in the rain. Now, I mean, again, are we raining cats or dogs at this point is just my simple response to that. So I don't really have to answer the question. But on Yellowstone, they mentioned that they don't mind kids. He won't take on dogs. I got that. And in this advancement where she's looking through the microscope, which I've had field lab experience, but and watching this rainwater behave differently. I'm thinking to myself, is that the advancement with these plastics, or that's what they're calling them now, or plastics. That's the code word for the human consciousness at my level of what are they announcing on the news, what's in the media, that they're actively weaving together this consciousness in some kind of pinhead way. And I mean that in all respectful. I'm just horseshoes on an escalator at this point. Apparently in this Transcendent movie, they mentioned this BCD on a 5 stories down type of a way. So they are many, many turns into this. And I am somehow just stuck between Je suis and Noah at the moment. So this, and again, the movie script itself, I thought as an artistic piece, I thought that it was really deeply and driven well, but I do have certain pieces that I have to rearrange for my own macrophage purposes, I suppose, at the moment.
Look at the sky. The clouds. We're healing the ecosystem, not harming it. Particles join the air currents, building themselves out of pollutants. Forests can be regrown. Water so pure, you can drink out of any river. This is your dream.
Not merely to cure disease, but to heal the planet and build a better future for all of us.
That is one portion of the dream. In the most simplex way, without advanced complex and multiplex getting confused about main mission. And the different turns that some of the management relationships have taken. And just simply my time here, I did say to the woman in the Gilded Room today, I said, it's so interesting because you have the people that joined humanity before we got here, in the we're here category, who started building some form of consciousness and in the local area, with some of it seeping into regional and long distance. I was like, you only have a built consciousness for so long. Like, is there a shelf life on consciousness, on these theoreticals, on the way of doing things correctly, or in the order and manner for which the macrophage department needs it to go into at private equity and the public utility and whatever's going on in between? I was like, so almost like these stepping stones. And how do you connect with your stepping stones that were provided for you while there's still a consciousness aware of them? Because I'm realizing my father's generation of whatever they built in order to protect my person is starting to fade and phase out years of development, research, and building that I don't have guarantees are going to survive in the future. And that is frightening. Now having children on the field and knowing that I need to participate in some form of active manner in order to keep up and upkeep. So then I look at this through another lens, backwards, because here's the message that the way that it's supposed to be built. But then I look at this and I'm thinking they have me hanging at bay on the bay side at the moment. They've taken Alexander and they've sectioned and quarantined him at Oceanside with strangers, and not even strangers that I really, it's between a rock and a hard place at this point. And so I have this, I don't know why they're keeping him at Oceanside and they're keeping me at bay. I don't know if it's an Air Force reference versus the naval reference, doing armed work or arms, like hands, legs, and navels, right? I mean, you have my son elsewhere and I have very limited access to him. That's a problem within itself as to keeping promises and keeping up with the sign of the times. So now if the man that holds up the night sky and all of the stars in the night sky, if he needed a count on the ground, because he's not letting just anybody into space to do inventory. So if he needed some kind of like public announcement, if and only if, is that what this is to represent? Is how much space debris is up there in some kind of countable field. So this way the inquiries as to who's doing what in what area of space outside of the atmosphere, because I don't get briefings on that. I don't get a count. When things were going really horribly at times, even still now, I have no idea at any given point how many satellites are out in space. I don't know who owns them. I don't know who controls them. I don't know what part of the earth they're floating under and have access to. I don't know what keeps us safe in that context. And that's somewhere in the NOAA field of things, being the NOAA or the NOAH, I'm not quite sure. But just being one of something on the surface of Earth, it's quite frightening. So I'm watching this. Is that what this interpretation is? Is somebody saying this is the field of work that they're in charge of, but in some paradoxical, paramounted way? I'm going to go back to the beginning of this. Actually, I'm going to stop halfway through. There's this part where Will is inside the monitor, and Evelyn, walks up to a monitor of this like screen, and there's an interactive artificial intelligence, I suppose, but he can actually monitor her hormones and the biochemistry simply just by her being close to the machine. Now, if that is actually possible, and not just some theoretical what if, um, that further concerns me into the local area of this healthcare system that I have access to, and the level of care or lack of care that I've been receiving, while there are people educated in that field. When I'm in need of service, they are not, just so private equity knows, how the social equity, and I don't know, are those the sharecroppers, the community, the whatever, that's been in some public utility recipientship. I don't know where the stewards are and the guardians and the galaxy part of it, of the private equity section, of allowances and participation, and like the requirements of if there's a private equity person in the field, they need utmost care and bill it to the insurance company. What I don't understand is why there's been such a lack of participation and personal responsibility of my own care in the hands of this part of humanity, while there are others who are receiving far superior care than myself. All different kinds. Here's where they go through this, whatever may have already gone on that I'm unaware of. And it's this riff, it says, and I mean, again, this is movie theater world, so it's not the real. There's some hybridization, I would assume, of things that, I mean, at some point you have to burden the higher ups in order to do their part, I would assume. Since life can just get so easy to look the other way if there's not some form of fire lit somewhere. The only danger in that thought process that I can come up with, though, is the cross relations, which is why in a very real part of the movie it says that they do not want to incite panic. They wanted to keep it quiet and held together, whatever.
Intelligence is an unnatural abomination and a threat to humanity. We're determined to stop any attempt at what you call transcendence.
So this is an odd one. Actually, that's why I'm here. We lost decades of research and development today. Right now, Will, your lab is the only one that can wake up a strong AI. So the Defense Department is asking if we might...
No, I'm not letting the government in. We've never taken their money.
No, Will. They just want to know if the work is on track. It's important to all of us.
I've heard a lot about the PIN project. Dr. Guess, is there any way we can have a look?
Do I have a choice?
Yes, of course I do.
So these are state-of-the-art quantum processors who implement faster computational power anywhere else in the world.
Computational power. Again. What happened to, for the most part, keeping people at pencil and paper and at university level, where few have access to this level of moving things at the speed of light.
social media.
Penn, tell Agent Buchanan about yourself.
I am PIN, a physically independent neural network invented by Dr. Will Castor.
Can you prove that you are self-aware?
That's a difficult question, Dr. Taggart. Can you prove that you are?
Can't program a machine to be self-aware because we have no idea how our own consciousness works.
That is your opinion. Just happen to be wrong.
Evidently, Casey managed to solve that, though.
There were people who existed before I arrived. There have been people who have been able to solve great things. Great minds have always existed. One of the greatest quotes in here from they've moved into a different section. They're no longer on Pentecost. Whatever they've moved into, again, if I wasn't present and in the field with them, I would have no idea. It's not something that's readily available to anybody unless they actually physically go and attend in whatever their allowance is in entering one of these buildings. So today is November 27th, 2022. This is part of my intellectual property, I suppose, that I have access to. It's where they've been leading, or where they've been using not only tax dollars, but, I mean, being left out of something, but having this minimal access to. It's like a really careful Rubik's Cube at this point. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. There was in the parking lot, somebody sent me a sign, a message, or whatever, an officer, NYPD officer. He was in a Tesla. So, message received on what's floating around in this part of the universe. And I did have a conversation with the woman at church. She asked how many sons I had. I said I had a very large solar system. I said I have 4. Kind of making light of it, but nonetheless. There is one sun that shines brighter than the others, simply for the fact that he's the one that have the hands of time in the easily to translate part to human consciousness. It's star 1978, star 378, Nicole, Cattaruzza.